phonemic awareness is critical for children in helping them understand how the words they use in the oral language are represented in print. It's interesting to think about oral language development in children. Somehow the brain automatically handles all the phonological stuff. It's one of the gifts of being human. And so the big challenge for kids is to make sense out of all these words that are coming to them from their parents and others, and to begin to attach meaning to those words. So they're really focused on the meaning of words. And not until you start to learn to read, you have to start thinking about really the individual sounds in words. It's kind of something new about words you have to learn to pay attention to. As we think about this task of acquiring power over words, particularly power over new words in print, scientists have shown us that there are sort of 3 or 4 very important things and kinds of skill and knowledge you have to acquire. The first of these really is becoming aware that words are made up of small segments of sound. At the beginning level, we call it phonological awareness, when kids are sort of sensitive to the fact that words might have syllables, or even that there are, when I speak to you in a sentence, there are individual words in that sentence. That's a kind of broad sensitivity to the phonological structure of words. And then as we begin to focus in on the individual phonemes in words, we begin to talk about phonemic awareness. And it's this last level, this level of we call phonemic awareness, that's really critical in learning to read, because the letters in the words represent the phonemes. And so if children have to become aware of these phonemes, learn to recognize them, to think about them, to notice them in words, so that they can make sense of how those letters work in words. Part of the job of becoming phonemically aware is not just understanding that words have these segments in them, but also learning how to hear the sounds in words, not only when they occur in an easy position, like at the beginning of a word, like ul, but also when they occur in a blend, like in clap, or when they occur right after a vowel, like in pulverize. It's easiest, of course, to recognize a phoneme when it occurs at the beginning of a word. It's next easiest when it occurs at the end of a simple word, and when it occurs in a blend or in the middle of a word, sometimes it's harder for kids to pick it out. But the more practice they get, the more phonemic awareness games they play, the more opportunities they have to respond, the easier that becomes. Our first job is to get kids to pay attention to the phonological structure of words, or the sound structure of words, to begin to think about it. And if we want them to do this with confidence and learn easily, we start with simple things and move to more difficult things. The second thing is you have to use big mouth movements. You have to be willing to point to your mouth and make exaggerated gestures with your lips. I've seen some teachers who are very effective actually say, watch my lips when I make this sound. Notice what happens. That helps kids to really become aware of the unique features of that phoneme. Sort of the last thing I tell teachers who are giving instruction that's related to phonemic awareness for kids is to have fun with it. You know, I've learned this myself in working with kids. Once you find that you sort of make it a game in where you're discovering the sounds in words and you're playing with the sounds in words, kids really like doing that. That's actually the magic of nursery rhymes. It's one of the reasons that nursery rhymes appeal to kids, because there's this additional dimension of regularity and discovery. And so I would say that if you're not having fun when you're teaching phonemic awareness, you're probably not doing it right. It doesn't have to be rote. It's not skill and drill. It's really discoveries, making discoveries about words. That's exciting to kids. The first lesson for teachers is that we should be always assessing children's phonemic awareness in the context of our instruction. And of course it's hard to do that in a large group, and that's why we recommend that part of every 90-minute block involves small group instruction. Most instructional activities are also good assessment activities. If you ask a child, for example, in a lesson to tell you what the first sound in the word bat is, and they say pat, then you know that they're not hearing that first sound correctly. That's a kind of an assessment.
How many sounds were in that word, Alicia?
4.
4. And how did you know?
Because everyone got in a box.
Everyone was in a box.
I'd like to talk just briefly about why we need to differentiate instruction. Well, the most basic reason is that for differentiating instruction in phonemic awareness is that kids learn and acquire phonemic awareness at different rates. Different children will need different amounts of practice. Some kids only need to practice a little bit, then they're ready to move on to the next thing. Other kids need to practice a lot before they can move to the next thing. There are 2 basic reasons why children learn and acquire phonemic awareness at different rates. One of them has to do with the kind of preparation they have for learning phonemic awareness, becoming phonemically aware when they come to school. Some kids have had like 1,000 hours of experience with alphabet letters and learning the alphabet song and learning nursery rhymes, reading along with their parents. So a lot of kids come to school with lots of experience in this domain. They're kind of ready. And you just kind of have to nudge them along a little bit and give them some interesting activities, maybe do a little bit of explicit teaching, and then they catch on. It seems like once you catch on in this area, then it's easier to learn even more. Whereas other kids come to school, you know, with almost no experience like this. Or they might have come to school coming from a different language background that actually doesn't have all the same phonemes in it, or they occur in different ways in words. And so for them, the learning task is enormously different. They have to have very solid foundational preparation. They have to have some of those basic experiences that the other kids got in their homes that they never got. The other group of children who come to school, they might have parents who have read to them every day and who've worked with alphabet letters and tried to teach them the alphabet song, but they have what we call a lack of talent in the phonological domain of language. You can think of it like musical talent. Some kids have a lot of it, some kids don't have very much of it. So for those kids, you could have an IQ of 120 and be low in talent in this area, and you're going to need more explicit, more careful instruction with lots more practice opportunities before your brain can really become aware of these sounds in words. So that's why we need to differentiate instruction almost from the very beginning.
They stand for a sound. So how many were there?
3.
3. There were 3 sounds in that word. In each box would represent a sound. So we know there were 3 sounds in that word.
If I was thinking about differentiating instruction, I would think about kind of the hierarchy of difficulty in acquiring awareness of the phonological structure of words. In other words, it's easiest to become initially aware of larger chunks of sound in words. For example, it's easier to become aware of syllables in words than it is of individual phonemes. It's easier to become aware of the ending part of words. We call that the rhyme unit. So maybe by October of first grade, there's going to be some kids who are in their small group instruction probably going to be working at the individual phoneme level. They're going to be learning to recognize that words have different and the same initial sounds, ending sounds, and middle sounds, whereas other kids might still be working on syllables, becoming aware of syllables in words, or learning how to recognize rhyme. And I would have to have sort of different lessons and different activities for those groups of kids to teach them at the appropriate level. That's one of the most difficult things that we can ask a kindergarten, first grade, second grade, or third grade teacher to do, is to differentiate instruction in a way that's sensitive to the individual needs of children and that really focuses on what they need at that point in their development.
How many sounds?
4.
4. Very good. All right. Erase the word. I am so proud of you. You did a two thumbs job for me today.